PJ Peggy asks, hi, just a question. Is it still possible to find a house with a $20,000 deposit in Sydney? That's a really great question. I'm going to split this answer in 3 categories: first home buyers, investors, and non-first home buyers. Now, let's assume that you're buying something under $750,000 and a house, which, by the way, good luck if you're trying to find a house for $750,000 in Sydney. But for argument's sake, you say you found the house, probably near the Blue Mountains. You got your 20k deposit, and as a first home buyer, you get your 10k grant. And that's assuming that you found a house and land package that is brand new and a turnkey property that you've never lived in before, because you won't get the 10k grant if you're buying a established house or a second-hand property. You also will save on the stamp duty, which you're exempted, which is usually 4% of the property price. So right now, assume you have $30,000. Let's say you borrow to the 95% maximum capacity. The property price you can get is $600,000. And depending on certain lenders that you choose, but we can choose a lender that covers the mortgage insurance, so you don't actually need to pay it physically with cash, but you borrow it too. Now let's move on to investor. You got your 20k, but there's no 10k grant, and there's no stamp duty exemption because you're a bloody investor. Now, nothing wrong with being an investor, but it's just the way the government treats investors. We're the bad guys, taking away all the first home property buyers' properties. Now, the loan to value ratio is no longer 95% because you can't do that for investors. You can only borrow up to 90%. Although certain banks do allow a 95% LVR borrowing, but I always suggest it because the interest rate is pretty high. So at 90%, you might think, hey, with 20k, I can get a $200,000 property. No, sorry, because you got to count in stamp duty, which you have to pay, which gets deducted from your $20,000. So right now, you don't have $20,000. You probably have, I don't know, $13,000 or $14,000. So with this 20k option, it will can your idea of buying any properties in Sydney. What about non-first home buyers, which means you've bought a property before and you want to buy a new property to live in? You also got 20 grand, but you have no access to the $10,000 grant and no access to the stamp duty exemption. Now, this option looks better because you can buy a property up to $400,000, but not really, because you got to take away stamp duty, which is at 4%. Roughly, minusing stamp duty, you probably can get a property for $350,000, which is okay, but can you find a property for $350,000? Maybe a unit, maybe a studio in like Blue Mountains or Campbelltown. Probably not even. Hopefully that answers your question, PJ Peggy 01, and thank you for the question.